Welcome to today's parent engagement session. Today's session is all about supporting your children with reading in Key Stage 1, so children who are in Year 1 and Year 2. Today's session really will cover the benefits of reading, why it's so beneficial to read with your children at home, the curriculum coverage, so what we expect the children to be able to do in terms of reading, some recommended reads that you could possibly share with your children at home, and lastly, the top tips or recommendations that we have, because we know it's not always the easiest thing. To begin with, let's look at the reasons why you should read at home. Reading is one of the most powerful tools that we have to improve children's learning. It really improves brain activity, engages and stimulates the brain, improves their creativity, their imagination. Their vocabulary expands because they're gaining new knowledge and new vocabulary every single time that they read, as well as their communication skills, hopefully through discussion of those books. Develops critical thinking skills as well. Sometimes there are problem-solving situations in books that they read, sometimes questions, both in non-fiction and fiction books that can arise, again, which you can discuss with your children as you're reading them. An increased ability to understand others and can enhance mental and emotional well-being. This one's really important. It allows children to empathize with characters, think about how they are feeling, to sometimes support them with resolving problems that they are having with their own friendships or situations that they are facing, how to interact with other people, which of course at WSO, the Grow Well program is a really big part of what we do here. So that's a really key part of reading. And also, finally, very importantly, reading allows children to access the entire curriculum. They need to apply those reading skills in maths when there's a word problem. They need to apply them in science when they're maybe faced with a word that they don't know, and they'd have to use inference skills to figure out the meaning of that word, given the context within the sentence. So reading really is extremely powerful, and it's imperative that you read with your children at home as much as you possibly can. As the quote here says, there is power in the pages. Just a little bit of information and statistics on the impact of reading. So a student who reads for only 1 minute per day will be exposed to 8,000 words a year and is more likely to score in the 10th percentile of standardized tests. Whereas if we are on the other end of the spectrum, a student who reads for 20 minutes per day will be exposed to 1.8 million words a year and is more likely to score in the 90th percentile of standardized tests. Of course, this is a very general statistic, but it just goes to show the power of reading and how it can really improve children's overall academic ability, their acquisition of language, just really beneficial impact on the child and their learning overall. Just a quick overview in terms of curriculum expectations. So here in front of us, we have the Year 1 Learning Ladder objectives. You may be familiar with some of them, having read the Term 1 reports and feel as though your child is secure in some of them or definitely well on their way to meeting these targets. They are separated into different ladders, which helps the teachers just to categorize what the targets are. And I won't read through all of them, but you can also see that they relate to our WSO reading skill characters. Now I'll explain a little bit more about these characters in a moment. But we expect the children to be able to do all of these things to some degree by the end of Year 1, and we separate them by Term 1, Term 2, and Term 3. The trickier ones, for example, I can read the common exception words, that's all of them, and we've left for Term 3. But some of the more simple ones, which we've really worked on in Term 1 in Year 1, such as making simple predictions about characters or recognize why a character is feeling a certain way, we would have covered in Term 1. The Year 1 common exception words have been shared with you either through your class teacher or in the Year 1 curriculum overview. They are also here for you to take a look at. It's a list of what we call red words. Those of you who joined our phonics parent engagement will be familiar with that term. These are words that the children cannot use their phonics knowledge to decode and read. So the sounds that we teach them in phonics lessons, they cannot use to read these words. Therefore, these words are taught to them separately, and we call them red words or tricky words that we just need to remember. So they should be able to read these by sight, to look at them and recognize what they are. They may use the initial sound to figure out what the rest of the word is, but they cannot use their phonics knowledge to decode them. The curriculum expectations for Year 2 are similar to Year 1, but of course progressive. So they build on from those skills that they've acquired in Year 1, those objectives that they've met in Year 1, and they're just a little bit harder, really, and developing their skills in more depth with their reading. If we take a look at some of these, again, we can see that they're spread across Term 1, Term 2, and Term 3, with the most difficult ones being in Term 3, and we will teach them at that point. The slightly easier ones, such as retelling a story, referring to most key events and characters, we embed that within our curriculum. So in Term 1, the children in Year 2 would have learned a story called Lost and Found, done a lot of oral retelling of that story. So they're really focusing on those skills of being able to remember and sequence a story in the right order and retell it orally. These, as I said, are progressive and really build on those Year 1 objectives. And again, we aim for the children to have met all of these by the end of Year 2, if not on their way to meeting them all by the end of Year 2. Here are what we call our WSO reading skills heroes. Skills such as prediction, inference, sequencing. They are quite big reading skills, reading concepts. And so we make it really fun and engaging for the children by turning them into characters. Now the children understand that these are not characters in the books. These are reading skill characters, reading skill heroes, which help us to understand the book better, or understand the text or whatever we are reading better. And I will give an overview of what each of these are, and also some of the questions that you can ask at home. And I think that that's the part that will be really useful for you parents. So first of all, we have prediction. And the prediction or predicting princess helps us to predict. When you predict, you think about what will happen next, always based on the clues or information that has been given. So it's not a random guess about what the children will think will happen. They have to use the clues. So if they're looking at the front cover of a book and you're asking them, what do you think this story is about? They're having to look at those clues, think about what the setting is and who's on the front cover or what is on the front cover. And so really get them to try to use that word because. I think this story or this book is about this and whatever their idea is. And then you can always ask them why or what clues are there. Other questions you could ask in the middle of a book is, what do you think will happen next before turning a page? And asking them why they think that might happen. And also a bit more challenging, looking at a random page of a book that you haven't read yet and asking them what is happening on this page or this picture, what do you think happened before and what do you think might happen after, which is slightly more difficult, but a bit of a fun challenge that you can do. Vocabulary, we have the word wizard. And the children actually are introduced to these characters in FS2. So by the end of Year 2, they should be secure with them. And then in Year 3, they move on to something called Vipers. The Vipers relate directly to these characters. So Word Wizard is all about the vocabulary and the words that are in a book, all about understanding the meaning of new words and maybe why an author has used a certain word. Different questions you can ask for really deepening their understanding of vocabulary are what does the word mean in this sentence, and choosing a new word that maybe they are not familiar with. Find a word which means sad, which means scared, maybe a new word again that they're not familiar with. Or what does this word tell us about? And you might be looking at a word which describes a setting, a place, or a character or a situation. Which of the words best describes this character, place? And at this point, they're using some skills of evaluation because you're asking them, which is the best word, do you think, and why? Can you think of any other words that author could have used to describe this? And that's giving them a chance to showcase their synonym knowledge. So if they have any other words that they know which also mean happy or sad or scared, or whatever word it is that you are looking at in the text. The next skill, and this is really a foundation, a very core skill that the children begin with, is retrieval. I always describe retrieval when I'm teaching children as simply as getting, they're finding and getting information from the text. So they don't really need to figure anything out. They don't need to use clues. They're simply finding and getting the answer. So, and it also can be explaining key features such as fiction and non-fiction, in fiction and non-fiction texts, such as characters, who's the characters, events, what happened, titles, what's the title of this text, or what is the key information that is being given in this text. Particularly in a non-fiction text, such as instructions or in an information book or a report. You could ask, what kind of text is this? Who are the characters, or who are the main characters in the book? Who did, and then whatever act may have occurred. Where did something take place? When did something take place? What happened when a certain situation took place? How did something happen? How many, or what happened to? These are really simple questions where the child should be able to look at the text, read it again, find the key words or key information, and simply give the answer. And we use Retrieval Robot for this. Inference. Inference is moving on where it's slightly trickier. And I always explain inference to children as figuring something out. So when you infer, you figure something out. And you do that by using, firstly, the clues in the text, and also a degree of prior knowledge. So they will use things that they already know just from life and the clues that are available in the text, pictures or words. And questions that you might ask are, why do you think, and you might be asking, why do you think the character did this? Or why did something happen? Can you explain why? Again, what a character did or why something happened. What can we figure out from this picture? Can we figure out that this that something has gone wrong in this picture, that there's a problem that these characters have to solve? How do you know? And what are the clues? Inference happens more so with narrative and storybooks. You can ask these types of questions. And we use the detective dragon, who we always say is looking for the clues. Always look for clues in the text and the pictures to help you answer these types of questions, where the answer is not readily available and you have to think about it and figure it out. Inference skills also apply to how a character may be feeling, or how a text might be making the reader feel. So you could ask questions such as, how is this character feeling, and how do you know? And sometimes even when the author has not explicitly stated that this character was feeling sad or this character was feeling overjoyed, the children can figure it out from the actions that the character is taking, or from the things, the words that they are saying, or also from the pictures available in the book. You could also ask them why a character was feeling a certain way. why a character did something, maybe out of a certain emotion, and how does the book make you feel as a reader and why? Sequencing Soldier is our next character, and sequencing is about retelling the story and sequencing it in the correct order. When we move on to something called Vipers in Key Stage 2, the S in Vipers stands for sequencing or summarizing. And first and foremost, to begin with, we really focus on sequencing things in the correct way. So this can be done with anything. This can be with a story where the children might have 5 pictures to begin with, which represent certain events in the story and then putting them in the right order, or instructions when they're putting the steps in the correct order. And we do want the children to be able to orally retell it independently in a short way once they've read the book. You can also ask them what happened in the beginning, middle, or end of the book. Can you number these events 1 to 5 in the order that they happened? As I said, we begin that with pictures, but once the children have really developed their reading skills, we might give them a sentence of each event, and then they would have to sequence them and put them in the correct order. What happened after a certain event? They're a little bit more challenging, so giving them a certain point in the text and asking them what happened after that. What was the first thing that happened in the story? So they're having to really remember and think back to the beginning and what happened then. Lastly, explanation, and we have the explanation eagle to help us with this. This is where the children are explaining something. They're explaining their preferences, their thoughts, and possibly their opinions of a text. You could ask them, who is your favorite character and why? Would you like to live in or visit this setting? Why or why not? Is there anything that you would change about this story that's a little bit more challenging, because then they're having to use their skills of innovation and think about what would they change? Would they change a certain character? Would they change the place? Would they change what happens at the end of the story? Do they like this text and what do they like about it? And lastly, do they think there is a lesson that we can learn? Often storybooks, children's storybooks do have moral lessons such as ones of friendship or kindness and helping others. And if the children can explain that, then that's really showing that they understood what the author was trying to convey or the lesson that they were trying to give to the children. Now, the children receive books from their class teacher. They receive home reader books, which are given to them based on their reading level. So the class teacher will have assessed your child using our assessment scheme and giving them a book color such as red or yellow or blue. Those books are intended to be within their reading level, so they should be able to read them independently. They're also given books on Bug Club, so those, again, are given according to their reading level. They should be able to read independently. Within the library setting, we give children a little bit more autonomy. Of course, we take them to the Key Stage 1 library, not the Key Stage 2 library. We have 2 separate ones, and we give the children autonomy in terms of they're already given up to 4 books which are based on their reading level. And so in the library, they may choose a book which is beyond their reading level slightly, but something that they're really interested in. And I think it's important then to give them a degree of choice with at least some of the books. So here is a recommended reads list. Now, some of them might be far too easy for your child. Some of them might be far too difficult for your child, but they are recommended reads for year 1 and for year 2. So if you're wondering sometimes about what books should I read with my children, I don't know what's appropriate, this is by no means an exhaustive list. There are many, many more books, but this is just a list of some of the books which we've collated from some of the websites available online and from our own teacher recommendations that you can read with your children. And lots of them have really nice moral lessons. It's really important to think about diversity as well and representation and what your children are really interested in. So these are just a few books that you could possibly get from the library, the Dubai Public Library, or purchase yourself from one of the bookstores we have in Dubai. Reading at home with your children, we recognise, is not always the easiest thing. After a very long day at school, the children sometimes just are not in the mood for it. And after a very long day at work, parents may have many more things that they need to do at home. Family life is not easy. However, we've got a few tips here just to try to help you and really support you into embedding reading into your family life at home. It's so important and it's so beneficial in terms of that relationship with your children, encouraging a real lifelong love for reading in your child, to really just make the time and space to read with them at home. So some top tips are: make it a routine. This really ideally should be daily, even if it's 10 minutes right at the end of the day, just before bed. That would be perfect. 10 to 20 minutes in year 1 and 2 is perfect. And if you can't do it daily, then possibly try to do it every other day, or definitely make it something that you ensure you do on Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Just trying to make it a routine, because children always love routine and they love to know what's coming next. And so if they know that that happens every day at this time, or every week on these days at this time, they will begin to look forward to it because they know it's coming and it's a special time. Reading is never a punishment. So always treat reading as a reward. Sometimes maybe if a child has made a poor behavior choice, parents might say, well, now you can't go on your iPad, you have to go to your bedroom and read. Which begins that association that reading is a negative thing in the child's mind, because reading is being given as a punishment. But reading is never a punishment. Reading is a joy, and really try to treat it as a reward, as opposed to something that is a punishment, or something that they don't necessarily want to do. Set an example from the adults at home. So any grown-ups at home, if they see those grown-ups reading at home, it will make them more inclined to read themselves. Children always tend to do what they see, not what they're told. So if they see mum, dad, grandma, uncle, whoever's taking care of them at home reading, then it will hopefully give them a bit of a positive view of reading, because they can see everyone around them enjoying it, even older siblings. Let them choose. So again, letting them choose what they read or what they want to read about, as well as letting them choose where. Maybe they want to read, go to the park and read, or maybe they want to go to the beach and read, and always have those books available. So if you're in the car on a long journey, just have that ready to take out and they can begin reading, just anywhere. Have it available to read anywhere. You also have some more tips on the side here, and this is just a few things about making it fun, different kinds of activities and things you can do. As I mentioned earlier, always ask questions, and have your children read out loud, because it really develops that fluency, that expression, their volume and confidence, especially in year 1 and 2. Always have your children reading out loud. You can play I Spy games with them, such as finding words beginning with a certain letter. You can ask them to see if they can find how many, whatever the book is about, how many trees in a picture of a book, just making it a little bit more fun and adding an I Spy game. Children love giving characters or hearing reading with funny voices. So when you're reading to them, try to make it really fun and give the characters a voice that you would expect them to have, or allow them to do that. Creating things, using the book that they read to inspire what they might want to draw or paint. Children love art and creating paintings, drawings, even story boxes. So having an empty shoebox and trying to recreate one of the settings in the book that you've read using arts and crafts. making it really fun alongside the reading, involving different things such as art. Being seen, so keep books everywhere. As I said, when you're in the car, have a book ready, have them on display in their bedrooms, have your books on display in the living room. So having those books everywhere, getting to the library, the Dubai Public Library, going online and looking for lots of apps. I know some parents aren't a huge fan of being children being on the iPad all the time, but there are some fun and engaging things online. Bug Club being a really effective tool, and making space. So again, just making that routine a special place and a certain time. And they are some tips, hopefully, which will help you to really embed that reading practice at home with your children. In terms of reading at home, as I've said, children have access to home readers, Bug Club and library books in Year 1 and in Year 2. Keep sessions fun and short. So rather than just trying to fit in a really long reading session once a week, try and keep it fun and short, like 10 minutes every single day. The questions that they answer on Bug Club should be completed independently, and the questions that they are being asked by you can definitely discuss the answers to those and have those in-depth conversations about the characters, about the events taking place in the books. I've listed some additional links here, so hopefully this session has been really informative in terms of the curriculum coverage, the benefits of reading, the different reading skills that they acquire, and the questions that you can ask associated with those skills, and some top tips, hopefully, to get reading, just more reading at home, more frequent. And here I've added some additional links in terms of free books. So Oxford Owl has some free books, and parents can just log on to that themselves, sign up and access a few more reading books. And they also have some advice for struggling readers. So if you feel like your child's really struggling with their reading at home, of course, reach out to your class teacher who will offer some more advice and support. But we also have some really great resources online, and I've listed one of them from Oxford Owl. Thank you so much for joining this reading, this session on supporting reading with your children at home. I hope that some of it was useful to you and you can take those things away. Those questions which I mentioned, which relate to the reading characters, will be available to all parents in Year 1 and Year 2, and your class teachers will be sending them to you on Seesaw if they have not done so already. Thank you so much for joining, parents.